You all pretty much know this car. If you don't, you're going to find out all about it. And I am incredibly proud and pleased to welcome these guests to Vaux ALL. Can I please ask you to give a very warm welcome to Richard Austin, Brian Osborne, and Ryan. I forgot your last name. What is it, Ryan? Ellen, come on over. Come sit down for me. Come on. So, Richard, come sit down, then we're going to have Brian, and then you, sir, on the end. So, we're going to sit down. I've never sat down at one of my shows before. I'm terribly sorry for you guys over there for not having a good view. I'm really sorry. But we've got cameras here, so you'll be able to watch it, and you'll be able to hear everything as well. If you do want to move around, there's plenty of spaces over here as well, so feel free to come round and move and join us. So, hello again, Richard. Good to see you again. I am hand the mic over to you so we can all hear you. We've also got Brian Osborne with it. Now, you were the Chief Detective Inspector back in the early 90s, responsible to track 40RA down. Hang on, there we go. And Ryan here, you did a lot of chasing of this recently when you did the story of this car at the start of the year. A fantastic story, fantastic article. So we're going to speak to all three of you. You've all got very different takes on this story. You obviously own the car, had the car taken from you. You chased the car, and then 30 years later, you were chasing the car, just albeit in a very different way. So, Richard, let's start with you. The Lotus Carlton. Let's go back to even before that fateful night, and let's talk about what life was like for you. Let's scene set. It's the early 90s. What was going on in your life? What were you doing then?
Well, I was a new father. I was looking after my family. I'd got a business in Evesham selling computers, and it was going well. And fortunately, I was able to get rid of that horrible pink Porsche that I was driving and replace it with a lovely Lotus Carlton. And therein lies the rest of the story.
You got the pink Porsche, as I described it to me. And you said to me when we met earlier this year that you weren't that keen on it, didn't really like it. And you're talking to one of your guys. You ran was it a computer business that you ran? Yeah. He mentioned, you looked at a Lotus Carlton, and that's where you started looking into the car.
Yeah, that's right. And this guy that told me, why don't you have a look at the Lotus Carlton? And he's the sort of person that you'd think wouldn't have a clue about cars and wouldn't have a clue about a Lotus Carlton. I had seen one at the Lotus dealer, only just manoeuvring round at the Vaux ALL dealer in Worcester. But then I looked into it, and basically it was right up my street. So I went gallivanting along it.
Fortunately, that other mic died, so I have to do the whole 1-2, 1-2. So when you saw it and first drove it, what was that like? I mean, I can't imagine I've been out in your car. Mike Mitchell took me out in yours. But I can't imagine what this would have been like in the early 90s. What was it like when you first drove it?
Like it is now, phenomenal. Really quick, and the overtaking acceleration was mind-blowing then, and it is still. There's not much that will touch it. It's somebody told me earlier, it was the fastest car in the world from 30 to 50 or something like that. It was. I'm going to put ex-policeman next to me, but he's not on duty. So I mean, I've done some. I remember one particular time, coming up behind, because it was a very threatening-looking car, and people generally moved over, but occasionally you got people being awkward. And this one time, I was started overtaking him. Of course, he closed up on the car in front. I just kept the throttle down, went past about 5 cars. It was that quick. And I won't tell you how fast it went on the M45 in that era, but it was well in excess of double the speed limit. But yeah, it's good. And this one has had the turbos redone, the injectors, and John, who's over there somewhere, and did all the work on it, and it's as good as a brand new one. Yeah.
So, obviously, brings back many memories for you. Hopefully, many good memories. I remember when we met earlier this year, and we were talking about the car and reminiscing about it. You said that was it one of your children opened a passenger door onto a cyclist and had to pay to have the bicycle repair and the door repaired. So it was your family car, albeit an almighty quick family car. So let's go to that night. Let's walk through what happened. Over to you.
Well, I was fast asleep in bed, and I heard the car alarm going. Looked out because the car was below my bedroom. And there it was being tampered with by some guys. And anyone in their right mind who'd thought about it probably wouldn't have done what I did. But I went tearing downstairs. Well, actually, first thing I did was I opened the window and shouted to them and told them to fuck off, you bastards. But they didn't. So I went tearing downstairs, and I was stark bollock. So there was one of my wife's jackets on the banister. I just put it over my shoulders, popped outside thinking, I've rumbled them, they'll go. And this guy just stepped up to me and he knocked me flat. So the next thing I remember, I'm lying spread-eagled on my drive, and I can hear, as I'm coming round, I can hear crunching and cracking of fiberglass, and they were using a Sierra Cosworth as a pusher. So you've got fiberglass against fiberglass, and it's not a pretty sound, and they were pushing it off up the road, and the next thing I did, run back in the house, call to my wife, say, call the police, I'm going after them. Now, I know this is crazy, but at this stage I've probably only been awake 3 minutes, 4 minutes tops, so you're not really in the most sensible state of thinking. So I jumped in her Renault Espace and go off after them, and they're using this Sierra Cosworth, pushing the car up the road, and then they turn left up a quieter road, and it was pretty bit uphill, and yeah, I'm following them up there. When they got to the top of the hill, they were obviously fiddling with the electrics to try and get it going, and there's me sat in a Renault Espace with no clothes on. And there's at least, I'd already seen 3 of them, there might have been more, wondering what the hell am I going to do? Anyway, the next few moments, a Cavalier 4-wheel drive turbo came reversing down the hill as fast as it could possibly go, and smashed into the front. I tried to get away, reversed a bit, but smashed into the front of the Renault Espace, and severely damaged it, steam pouring out everywhere, and that was my hopes of doing anything severely defeated. And the next thing I know, they got the car going, and I could hear it driving off into the distance, and I limped back home in the very bruised Renault Espace, and that was the sum of that particular night.
It was sort of ironic, there was a car alarm going off as you were telling that. But, so that one night has now got all of these people sat here listening, and so many more other people on the internet saying all these stories about it and so forth. Now we're going to move from you, Richard, and we're going to move on to you, Brian. So, you chased, alright, I say chased, you were responsible for trying to track down this gang. Now, for young members of the audience who fully appreciate the Lotus Carlton, when it was announced, they actually tried to get it banned. They debated it in the House of Commons, and they said, you know, it's so fast, this car, it's quicker than most of the Ferraris that are available today, that if someone steals it, we'll never catch it. You know, we had a senator in here earlier off Auto Barnstormers. They were trying to keep up with it. Powerful, more powerful engine. You know, it was just a different league in terms of performance. Where this was stolen, they were effectively going over 3 counties. And back in the day, the police didn't always talk to one another that clearly, did they, between them?
Hello, can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, just to put the record straight, I was a detective sergeant, temporarily in charge of operations in Bromsgrove in the CID there. So this took place in Evesham, which was only a stone's throw away. The incident regarding Richard and 40RA, but I knew nothing about that, and such was the communication between even neighbouring police stations in the day. However, we very quickly became aware of 40RA, the source of 40RA, and obviously the incident involving Richard by way of a series of armed robberies, and I say armed robberies in the sense that these criminals, we have some video of these criminals in the day, and they were armed with batons and all that kind of thing, nothing more than that, but sinister enough. And we had, I think, 10 or 11 offences. And the difficulty for us then was the fact that the offences took place over 3 police forces. There's West Mercia, where I was based, Warwickshire, and West Midlands. I was based in Rubery at the time, and we had several offences, and Rubery bordered West Midlands as it bordered Warwickshire, and that inherently caused a problem, because, as you rightly say, Tim, communication between police forces in those days was, to say the least, not very good. In fact, police forces sometimes withheld information from each other, all about kudos in the day. So these offences started to take place, and the media hype was incredible in the day, based on the fact that myth, folklore started to gather momentum in that, you know, the strapline almost was, it's the car that the police vehicles can't catch. Well, I suppose that's correct, but in truth there were very little or no actual pursuits for this car. It was seen, sighted, that's the same thing, but it was seen after the event, but it very, very quickly got away, and that's what actually happened. And in that locality there were several miles of motorway very nearby. The one thing that we did have, which was a bonus, was the cooperation of the 3 forces with the Central Motorway Patrol Group in the day. So they were all alerted, and for the period of time that these offences were taking place, and I can't remember over what period that was, we would every night be prepared for 40RA. And we never got anywhere near it, on the basis that the offences took place and the car disappeared. Today, it wouldn't happen because the vehicle would be very quickly seen on the technology that's available. The real galling part of this vehicle is that the vehicle had the original number plates retained. So 40RA was emblazoned across this car as it was used for these offences. We were used to vehicles like Ford Cosworths being on false plates, but this vehicle was taunting us, in fact. It was taunting the police, knowing, or the criminals in it knew, that they would get away with the spoils of their crime. So that's the very broad story, but the media hype was incredible. And with that came, of great interest to the public. We were glad about that, because the only way we were going to find this was a member of the public seeing it somewhere. But I imagine the criminals that were using this for the offences probably enjoyed that as well. So it was a bit of a melting pot of kind of interest, and the intention was, at the end of the day, was to try and rid the roads really of this car in the hands of the criminals. And every morning during this period, by the way, I'd come to work, and my first question of the chaps in the CID were, has 40RA been out tonight? No. Oh, thank goodness for that. So the intention was to try and, we would never catch it, was to get it back from these criminals. And we did, in the end, by virtue of using the police helicopter. Putting the helicopter up at various times, spooked the criminals, we think, and then that increased the hype from the media. Even the police helicopter can't catch 40RA, so it went on. So I think I've been talking enough, haven't I? I'm almost excited. This thing is the one, this car is the one in my service that's come back to bite me, honestly.
Just fascinating hearing it, first hand. Of course, back in the day, they used it was ram raids. It was crashing into news agents to get cigarettes, alcohol. That's what they were really looking for. That was the way that would make money.
Yeah, what I've got to say, as he snatches the microphone back, these offences were serious offences in the day. Armed robberies, goodness knows to this day how many were involved, where they are today, because the people that are not sat here are the criminals that actually stole the thing and committed all those offences. Because when this was abandoned, we expected it to be carried on with another stolen, powerful car. But it never was. It was almost, they'd had their moment with 40RA and ditched it in the canal, and the offences stopped at the same time. The good news for us was, but not for Richard, was the fact that the car was now off their hands, because potentially, had there have been a pursuit of any sort with the police, it could have ended a lot worse. The most serious offence of all of this was Richard being assaulted, actually. There was no violence, nobody hurt in respect of the offences committed by this, but yeah.
No, fascinating to think back then. That was sort of the currency of criminality. That's what was valuable. In fact, I'm going to show you something. You guys don't know that I'm going to do this, but I went on Google Maps and I found the news agents. You went back there for the photo shoot in Rubery, and opposite the news agents is the police station. Okay, so over here, I'm going to use you, madam. Hope you don't mind. You are the front door to the police station, okay? This is how far away the front door to the news agents was. It's about there. That's how far away it was. And they ram raided it. And the only thing that happened, if memory serves me right, was they put a baton through the back window. That's as close as they got to it. Now, 40RA was left in a canal, ditched in a canal over in Knoll, I think it was. You, at this point, Richard, had already sort of detached yourself from that Lotus Carlton, and were actually, it's kind of ironic this, because I was sponsored by an insurance company, but you were having a bit of an argument with your insurance company to get it replaced. See, there you go, cherished vehicle insurance, free plug for you, the importance of having the correct insurance, especially for something special like this, because you were looking to replace it pretty much.
Yeah, it was a long, laborious negotiation with the insurance company. They offered me a derisory amount initially, and they kept increasing it, and I kept saying, well, look, I can't buy a replacement car for that sort of money. And in the end, they surrendered and said, well, if you find one, equivalent sort of specification, mileage, etc., we'll buy it for you. So we found another one that was down in Devon at the time, and eventually got the money out of them, bought that car, and I kept that one for like 18 months, 2 years, I can't remember exactly, and sold it to a friend of mine who did the same sort of thing. So that was my second Lotus Carlton. This one here is my third. So I think that's enough for one man.
And before to you, I've not forgotten now, I'm going to come on to you, but my last for you, Richard, and hopefully our man over there with the sound system will turn it down a little bit for us, because we are trying to have an interview. If anyone wants to shout at him, feel free. Fast forward a few years later, and you bought your third Lotus Carlton, and we finally got 40 RA back on it. But not many people know that 40 RA was actually a sort of a birthday present for yourself, the number plate.
I think actually I'd already gone just past my 40th birthday when it came up for auction at a DVLA auction. So fortunately I was able to get it and use it on. I've used it on a variety of cars. It's part of me. However, it's not mine. It now belongs to my son, who's also RA, and I gave it to him on his 40th birthday, but he's had to loan it me back in perpetuity till I pop my clogs. So he'll no doubt have the car as well. But so yeah, that's how it happened. And there were some pictures. I had it on a bright lime green Hyundai Kona electric for a while, and the community took a very dim view of that. So. But yeah, I've really enjoyed getting back to a Lotus Carlton, and John, who's done some work on it, he's over there somewhere. It's remarkable. It's still, this one is as quick as the first one I had. The second one I had, I never really liked it. It didn't go as well. A bit of transmission tunnel shake, and I don't know if you've ever done the same thing. You buy one type of car and replace it with another, and you know, it's happened to me 2 or 3 times where you think this one's not as good, and that was definitely the case. But this one now, fantastic. Really goes nicely and cruises nicely. It's not just about the speed. You'd think it was a lot more modern car when you're travelling in it. It's smooth, quiet, easy. Good.
I've been out in 40 RA, and it is so smooth. We went out in it after a few weeks ago, and even now it still feels like a modern smooth car. So I can imagine what it felt like back in the 90s. Now, you sir at the very end, who've been waiting very patiently, rather than me coming away, what I'm going to do is this. There we go. Hi. So we have the man who bought the car originally. We have the man who chased the car originally, and now we have the man who chased the story 30 years later. So this was sort of one of your first stories for the magazine.
Yeah, it was. So I've been at Classic and Sports Car for a couple of years now. So yeah, I was looking for an opportunity to do my first big story. And yeah, I mean, also I knew about the car and the story, seen it online for like a lot of people. I just bought another car. I was like, good opportunity. But I mean, it's mad really, the story's still so popular and it still crops up every so often. I mean, not to make you two feel old, but it happened 4 years before I was born. So, you know, as I say, 30 years ago this year it all happened. But it's such a brilliant story, and you're saying like even with not just about this car, but the Lotus Carlton in general, how formidable it was when it first came out in the early 90s, how quick it was. I said it got debated in the House of Lords. The transcripts are online actually, if you want to, I don't know if you've seen it, but you can find it all online where they were talking about it. But it's interesting because, like you said with Ferraris at the time, you could still get cars that were quicker than this. There was the Diablo and the Ferrari, I think it would have been 348 at the time. And it's not like this was especially cheap at the time. It wasn't like, you know, one that anyone could go and buy. But it did seem that people were, police and in government were generally quite frightened of it looking so ordinary, but actually being so quick. Doing the story, I spoke to my manager, who's been lucky enough to, Alistair Clements, who's been lucky enough to drive quite a lot of stuff. And it's a Vauxhall show, so I'm sure there's some VXR8 owners around. But he said this is still quicker off the line than the VXR8. I don't know if anyone's listening, you'll pull up at a red light somewhere out to go out the show. And, but yeah, try and find out while Brian's not looking. But yeah, it's just such a fascinating story. So yeah, we started looking into it. Long story short, I mean, the same day they were there, and it's such a fantastic story. But from what we did, I found out Richard had the car again. I thought it'd be brilliant to, do a photo shoot, get the whole story, try and get a police officer that works in it. So I found Brian through the National Association of Retired Police Officers, which is short to NARPO, which is much catchier than the full name. But yeah, so I contacted through that. And he was happy to help out. We found an old Rover SD1 police car, which would have been a little bit old for the time. I think he's W3 series and Vauxhall Senators would have been at the time. Unfortunately, it was really hard to find a police car from that era. I think the Met have a really good heritage fleet. West Mercia, Midland stuff is actually really hard to come by. So I think there's a Central Motorways Police Group Range Rover around, that's part restored. There was a Rover 827 we found, which was about the right era, but that had literally just gone up to Scotland. And then we found out, there's a West Mercia Police now have a Rover SD1. It still belongs to them. I think the weird story of it is it covered 100. It was Dave Newbold, who's West Mercia's fleet manager, who brought the car along for the photo shoot. And he joined the police force. He joined the force about 11 years ago, I think it was. And this Rover SD1 was still technically on their fleet. So obviously he joined. He was like, was 20-something, 30 years, 40-year-old car doing on the, not doing mental maths, on the fleet still. And they had a system where when a car reached 120,000 miles, it was off the fleet, they retire it, get something new. This car had 106,000 miles, so it basically just evaded being scrapped. They've been sat in the corner of their fleet somewhere. Then, long story short, it's been restored. It was restored just before our shoot. So really lucky we had that. It was literally, I think they still need to start the carbon bit, so we had to go a bit slow on the motorway between our destinations. But we were super lucky with it. And we went back we approached BBC Midlands Today, who had some old footage from it that they digitised, which is where we saw the nice old videos of Brian and Richard at the time, looking very serious when they were trying to look for it. And obviously that basically told the story. So from there, that's how I got in front of Richard, because it was in the description for the show. And then from there, like you say, there was the last place they did the ram raid on, which was Super Six in Rubery, which I'm surprised is not called Super Six anymore. I think it's Gill's News in Rubery High Street, if anybody knows. But that was the last one we did it to. So we met up in January with the car. We all met up. Must have been about 20-30 miles away, I think, from where it was dumped in the canal. And it just happened to be that it was pretty much, I think, 1 week out, but 30 years to the date it had been found. They'd found it in the canal. We went out to Ruby, took some pictures of it in front of the news agent and roads around there. And then I think the final part of the story, which I managed, the guy actually who pulled it out of the canal in Knoll, is a guy called Craig Tipping, who lives in Birmingham. Found him through on social media, and he just said, I think I got the call that some it's been scraping on on something submerged in Knoll. A Skidmore's garage, I think he worked for. He went down in an old Leyland truck and yanked it out the river. And I think from there he took it to the forensic lab. They covered it in some ultraviolet powder, and then, I think off it went from there. It got scrapped. So 30 years later, I think that was how the story ended, as far as, unless anyone else can prove otherwise. But it's just a fantastic story. So.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think all that's left to say, and I'm hoping all of you'll help me say thank you and appreciation for the guys coming down and spending some time with us today, with a huge round of applause for Richard Austin, Brian Osborne and Ryan from Classic and Sports Car. Big thank you to all of them. There you are, you've heard the story now. All of you now are ambassadors, okay? So whenever you see some rubbish being said about 40RA online, you can now say, well, I heard the original story of Vaux ALL. and then you can post a link to the video. All right, thank you very much. I need them views. And oh yeah, he's happy to take questions. Happy to take some questions. So then, who has got a question? Yes, you over there. Right, I'm going to come over to you. Yeah, you put your hand up. You have a question. Have you got a question?
Yes. How much did you buy this Carlton for?
Ooh. You did say any question. So, your Carlton, are you prepared to share how much it cost you?
I bought this one quite cheap because it had, for one thing, it was in the Outer Hebrides on that Isle of Lewis. And mechanically it wasn't very good really, it's had a lot done to it. So if you add together what I paid for it and what I've had to spend on it, I guess it's about 60,000. Well, no, it's not bad, but I took the plunge with a car that I'd never seen. I just thought, right, we can make something of this, and so I was lucky. Yeah, I'm very pleased with it. Yeah, hopefully. Well, my son might benefit from it.
That's very kind of you to share that information. Right, any more questions? Let's see hands. Yes. Oh, I might know you've got a question. No, go on. What's your question, sir?
Hey Richard, who valets your car?
Hey, there you go. Who valets your car? Who cleans your car?
Some schmuck I met at school years ago.
You walked into that one, didn't you? Right, any more questions? Yes, you sir, you sir. Look at that. There we go.
Has the story pushed the value of the plate up?
That's a good question. Your number plate, do you think, or has the story and what happened increased the value of the number plate?
I think the car and number plate are inextricably combined, and should either one come up for sale, they'd have to be sold as a pair. Now, what that would fetch, I have no idea. It depends how badly somebody wants it, and ideally, if there's two people bidding against each other, it could be quite a bit, but I'm never going to find out.
Good man, good man. Any final questions for Richard, for Brian, for Ryan? Yes, you sir. Go. Don't be shy. I'll tell you what, I'm getting steps in today, aren't I?
And Richard said no, and my friend and I went on our push bikes and watched it get pulled out, but I didn't know it was what it was at the time.
Wow. So you actually saw it getting pulled out, and very kindly Brian has shared some of the footage of it coming back into the lab off the back of the recovery vehicle. It's quite sad to see, actually. It was quite sad to see such a special car treated that way. Last question then. Yes sir, I'll come over to you. I really am getting my steps in today.
What was the number of the first 40 RA, your first car? What build?
What was the build number? Can you remember? Ooh, on the spot now.
Unfortunately, I don't remember, and I haven't got a clue. I wish I had, and I wish I'd taken more pictures at the time, but sorry, can't help with that one.
There you go. You've asked the final question for us. The final myth of 40 RA remains unanswered, even with the original owners and everyone who was involved in it originally. We still don't know the original number. Ladies and gentlemen, can I please ask you just once again to put your hands together for our guests here today. A big thank you from all of us here.
Thank you. Just a very quick question. If any of you can help us with our inquiries into tracing the criminals, please form a queue by the vehicle commentary point. Thank you.
Yeah, we did actually try and get a police car to follow you here, but we didn't quite manage that. So, ladies and gentlemen, I really hope you enjoyed that interview. Thank you so much for all standing by the arena and listening. Really do appreciate it. What we're going to do now is, if Richard, it's completely up to you if you want to stick around or head off, completely up to you, but we're going to invite our next club into the arena and we're going to carry on with our arena activities. But again, gents, thank you so much for coming down and joining us. Really has been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, sir. Thank you. So coming up for you next, ladies and gentlemen.